This week we find ourselves in the terrifying apocalyptic future of 1997 because we're discussing Turbo Kid from 2015 from writing, producing and directing trio RKSS. From the late 2000s onwards, we started getting a lot of films like Manborg and Ninja Cop. Really, really low budget films with a really intentionally retro, hokey 80s aesthetic, which lent entirely into practical effects you would have seen in the 70s and especially the 80s. That weren't trying to be realistic. They were trying to emulate a time when special effects were limited in a range between terrible to passable, but in a very specific way because, you know, the technology was at a certain point. The sensors were at a certain point, so, you know, you'd have to show stuff in a certain way. That is what those films and this film we're discussing today were trying to emulate. And this film goes further where it's really trying to emulate everything about the 80s. Like, it is the 80s on steroids. You've got your typical Mad Max-esque post-apocalyptic world. You've got the cyberpunk sort of vibe to everything. You've got a synthy retro 80s soundtrack from Le Matos, an electronic duo. The only actual song that plays in the film is a cheesy 80s power ballad from a BMX movie from 1986.
Rad.
And everyone in the film rides BMXs, from your villains to your heroes to the cannon fodder extras milling about in the background. Not just that, but the whole story arc and the plot points suit the 80s perfectly. You know, you have your hero who's a down and out kid, literally named The Kid, until he gets his superpowers in the form of a Turbo Man suit later on in the film, in which case he becomes Turbo Kid, who is your classic 80s main character. He is down and out, no one believes in him, but inexplicably he becomes the hero. And we're introduced to Turbo Kid as he's riding through the wasteland, which seems completely desolate, but you see large bodies of water. So you're thinking, okay, it's not so bad. You know, they've got access to water. Usually that's one of the key drivers of films like this, you know, the water supply. That's the most sought after commodity that usually the big villain is controlling. But it's got a weird green tint to it. That was pretty much the only CGI you'll see throughout the whole film. The water being green was actually never intended. The whole point of the film was that it was a complete desert wasteland. It never rains. That was in the original script. When you're watching the film, it literally mentions acid rain in the opening voiceover. And the reason for that was that when they were filming in Canada, choosing a spot where basically that time of the year, it should never really rain that much. They had torrential rainfall for weeks before production and all throughout the production. So it meant they had to completely change everything on the fly. Luckily, I actually think it works better because I love the idea of acid rain pouring every day.
And the more I think about it, like when I saw there's 3 directors here, it all went to pot because they wanted to do it in the desert, but it kept raining so they couldn't, so they had to change it up. Directors that maybe aren't as skilled or didn't believe in their property so much, you could easily argue with 3 directors. Like if one was pissing you off, you'd be like, you're fucking ruining the production.
Well, there was a lot of long debates apparently where they would work things out. Depending on what source you look at, the budget changes a lot, but the highest I saw was about 500 grand and the lowest I saw was 60 grand. So it's not exactly something you can be like, halt production for 3 days as we work out how big the blood squib should be when this guy's head explodes.
That's fair enough. They sit down, they talk about it. You know, the whole thing about them not being able to do it in the desert, they probably sat down and was like, look, it's pissing down with rain. We need to change this up. If one of them fell out, if the whole desert thing, they couldn't find a way around it. I mean, New Zealand and Canada seem quite chilled, so probably the film board meetings between the two for the collaboration were quite like laid back and cool. Like imagine if it was a collab between Russia and Ukraine film boards. But what I'm trying to say is there was so many like variables in this that like one thing falling down could break the whole thing. Such a hot pot of like the 3 directors, the 2 different film boards on it. The way the final product come out is very impressive.
You know, it's unusual when you get a case like, say, the Coen brothers, where you've got two of them over a prolonged career making films together. Brothers, I guess it makes more sense because you think there's such a core inbuilt dynamic there that you're so used to. Like, I could imagine how that creative process would work a bit easier. But getting a trio of writer-directors is so unusual. I don't even know if I've ever really seen it before. This film got made off the back of the success of a short film called Tears for Turbo, which was essentially this character in this world condensed into a 20-minute short film that cut out the love story and all those other more world-building elements and just focus on the action and the tone. It was entered into the ABCs of Death, a short film competition in Canada, and it had enough success for them to form their own film studio and make this as their first feature film. And it even has a homage to the 80s cheesy comic books from that era, you know. At the center of the story is the Turbo Rider, a completely fictional made-up comic book for the film. All the pieces were drawn beautifully. You know, you see the kid flipping through the pages because he's an obsessive Turbo Rider fan as kind of a form of escapism from the fucked up reality of his Mad Max-esque apocalyptic daily life. You know, if he comes across a copy of a Turbo Rider comic book that he hasn't read yet, then he will take that over getting water for the day. You know, he's obsessed with it and sort of forms his idea of heroism and what a man does and what is right from reading this comic book. And you could say that probably about the writer and director trio who made this film, because everything about this film is comic book style, from the violence to the dialogue to the physics to the characters. You know, everything is overblown and silly and cartoonish and just brilliant. Like, I fucking love this film.
His life seems to be just going around in his BMX, as you said, finding piles of 80s related junk to then sell to his mate who works in a bar but buys the junk off him to swap for water. I really like this opening scene because he's going through the junk, he finds a Rubik's Cube, he fiddles around with it, he throws it away. He lives in an underground bunker, which I find is pretty cool. It kind of reminds me of that character from The Simpsons, comic book guy. He has all action figures, all comics. It was a brilliant scene when he's selling his junk to the junk dealer and he's found one of those pens, which I haven't seen for many years. You know, the pens, it has a woman on it and you put it upside down and the clothes fall off. He's so obsessed with Turbo Rider that he's offered water and he goes, but I could give you this, and dangles the comic like a carrot in front of his face. And he accepts, as you said, the comic over water, which to me, unless he's got an unlimited supply of water, that could be a death sentence. Do you know what I mean?
And even the clean water that he's bartering for looks like shit.
Yeah.
Like, he's kind of looking at it like, oh my God, that looks even worse than yesterday. And I love as well, you see electricity in the film, but obviously there's no power grids on anymore. So you're thinking like, how's that working? And then the guy he's bartering with starts yelling at this old man on a bicycle who's running a generator from it. And he's saying, pedal faster, you lazy shit.
Well, yeah.
in the back of the head.
Because the music in the bar's going from his pedaling, so he's like knackered and it turns off.
Tonally, the film, it's a really hard one to get right, because we were talking before about like the other films like Manborg and stuff and Ninja Cop, and those films are great, but I often find I'd watch them like I'd listen to an album where you don't need to listen to the whole thing. You listen to a couple of songs, maybe you start at the beginning, maybe another time you start in the middle, maybe you play the songs that you like out of sequence, but you can just watch it and let it wash over you. I do get a bit of a abstraction, silliness fatigue when watching it because they don't really feel like a film. I get this also when I'm watching an anthology where I just tap out at a certain point, because as much as we talk on this show about let writers and directors take chances and try very different things, but generally, you know, there's a reason there's that whole classic hero's journey arc. And, you know, in writing school, the first thing they tell you in day one is, oh, there's only 6 or 7 stories in the world and everything's just a rehash of that. Or in these sort of films where it's just so abstract and silly and bizarre, you're too far away from believing what you're seeing in a way where you can tap out. But this film actually feels like a film. You know, they've dialed down that abstract silliness and bizarreness enough where you can actually follow the whole story and get immersed in the world. And it's a really hard tone to get right. And there is the occasional gag, you know, like at one point when Michael Ironside, playing Zeus, the main villain of the film, he's interrogating someone and he's built this massive torture contraption that is basically someone on a bicycle with the spokes tied to someone's intestines that's going to pull out all his entrails. The guy being tortured just gives up the information straight away, but Michael Ironside's like, oh, do you know how long it took to build this thing? I'm at least going to give it a go. Go on. And the guy starts riding, all his entrails are coming out. But for the most part, it's, say, like in Ash vs. the Army of the Dead. He is ridiculous, but basically everyone else plays it straight around him. Everyone else is the straight man for him. And that has to be there for the humor to work, because it's like the contrast of the two. But in this sort of film, basically everyone is the straight man. And you as the audience, the nonsense and absurd and surreal sort of deaths or events or lines of dialogue or plot points or characters that you're seeing are only so funny and enjoyable because everyone's playing it deadly straight.
Yeah, 100% agree. I guess you have to be a bit out of the box to survive in this time, you know? When he's selling junk to his friend at the bar, in the background, this bar looks really cool, by the way. I wish if I lived in that time, I'd be a lot in there.
Yeah, the set design throughout's really good.
I don't know, they must know about boxing, they must know about other forms of combat, but they've gone for some reason as the big sport of the era, the time, arm wrestling. And the champion of champions of the wasteland is a cowboy Aussie called Frederick. He's having one of his arm wrestle, and like if you lose, it's cool because they're set up on like blenders, and if you lose the competition, your arm gets all cut up, which gives it a bit of jeopardy. I like that. But Frederick is without sounding gay here, is a strapping Aussie, clearly modelled on the brilliant Steve Hogan, in my opinion, Crocodile Dundee.
Do you reckon? Yeah, I guess so. I didn't actually think of that. What I thought of was Over the Top with Sylvester Stallone, where he's that 80s movie where he's an arm wrestling champion and he's a trucker, but he's got to enter into the arm wrestling Olympics. I was also getting vibes of Fallout, where you just randomly have a cowboy in the film, even though it's the future, and he's clearly a cowboy in every sort of classic motif of the genre, but also, in case you weren't sure he was a cowboy, he dons around in a cowboy hat and cowboy attire. And he is just cool as shit. You know, he is the hero in the film before the kid has become Turbo Kid. And he's just a badass, man. He's not going up against Zeus, but he clearly has clashes with him. But he's like a lone ranger. He's got his posse of people that follow him. And they're apparently looking for a water supply, because there's rumors and murmurs all throughout the film that there is a water supply somewhere. And we don't have to just beg for scraps from Zeus. You know, there could be abundance of water for the whole post-apocalyptic community. But he's basically just doing his own thing. He's arm wrestling, he's saying badass one-liners, he's mugging people off at every chance he gets. He bumps into the kid at one point by accident, and he starts scolding him about, a man's personal bubble. You invaded my space, motherfucker. Like, what are you doing? And it's a really cute moment where later in the film, the kid tries to use that line on someone else. So you automatically know, okay, so he looks up to this guy. He wants to be a hero, but the kid is basically just living the easy life. He doesn't want to be around anyone. He lives away from the little shanty towns where people go to barter for stuff, and only ever goes there when he needs water. Majority of the time, he just spends by himself in his bunker, which, as you said already, is such a great set. It feels like, there's action figures and comic books and posters everywhere, and he's got his little Walkman playing his 80s power ballad. And it looks like if a kid from the 80s, what they would turn their perfect bedroom into. It feels like the 80s just vomited over the whole set.
Proper man cave, innit?
And like I said, Turbo Kid likes to be alone, so he has the ruins of a play park with a pair of swings that he likes to go read his Turbo Rider comic. Getting really into it, acting out the voices, saying it out loud. And then all of a sudden, he finds he's not alone, because Apple, played by Lawrence LaBouffe, has sat down next to him in total ninja stealth mode. She's just crept up from nowhere. And her character's such a breath of fresh air in this film, because she is the inverse to everyone else. If you're going to survive in this world, you got to be hard, you got to be tough, you got to fucking learn to scavenge. Everyone is gristled, everyone's trying to climb up onto each other's shoulders and kick each other's teeth in order to just keep their head above water. But she is childlike, she is incredibly friendly, completely overly trusting. She has like a cute childlike demeanor and vibe to her. She wants to play it. She wants to be best friends. She talks almost like a little kid. And again, it's that like what you as a teenager, if you were romanticizing the idea of a girl or having a girlfriend in your mind, would be. You know, she's not a real woman in the way she acts. She is a ditzy, cute, endlessly endearing figure, and immediately just wants to be his best mate. You know, she slaps some contraption on his wrist and let's be best friends. What do you want to do? What do you want, like, do you want to hang out? What should we do? Oh, let me just deal with my friend first. And she walks around the corner and she sees she's talking to someone. So Turbo Kid has a little look and she sees it's this rotting corpse that she's dragging around with her, and she's talking to him like he's still alive, saying like, oh, you don't have to worry about me anymore, I've got a new friend. So he's like, what the fuck? And he just gets out of there and runs away from her.
Obviously, Turbo Kid's wary because, like, you're in an apocalyptic wasteland. You can't trust anyone. If someone comes up to me on the fucking London Underground, you know, how do I get to Euston Station? Firstly, I think, do you want money? What do you want from me? Like, why are you coming up to me? Why are you being friendly? And that's just in a civilized environment. So he's wary, and then obviously he sees the dead body and he's even more wary, but she just won't leave him alone. He wakes up the next day inside his little man cave, his little bunker, and Apple is there. And he's like shocked, like, why are you here? Like, what are you doing? And she's got cereal in a bowl and she's like, it's breakfast time. Like, she's touching all his figurines, she's touching his book, his comics, his pride and joy. And then he's scuttling around behind her going, don't touch that, put it down. You know, and that's when he uses Frederick's line of the personal bubble. And it's just a really good continuation of that scene.
And on the cereal box, it's actually the French translation for the title of Soylent Green, which is both a nod to what the plot's going to be about, slightly, but also part of so many nods to other 80s films throughout it. You got Cobra Kai nods, you know, the No Mercy line, but he's like, okay, you know, if we're going to be mates, I have to teach you how to scavenge. I have to teach you how to survive in the wastelands.
She knows nothing about post-apocalyptic wasteland survival. Like Zombieland, where they're going around like rule 1 of Zombieland, rule 2. You know, you need a helmet, find a dead skeleton in a car, and they try and take the helmet. It's got snakes, so a Turbo Kid's all freaked out, but she takes it. She needs a weapon. If you can't find a weapon, you make one yourself. So he finds a broken stick and a gnome and tapes it on it.
And she says, this is my gnome stick, which again is a nod to Ash from Army of Darkness, where he's got his boomstick.
So many Easter eggs in this film. It's great. They're going around and everything seems so great. Like, she's even being a bit annoying, like hugging him when he's riding along, and he adds that as a rule, which is a really nice touch. All going great. They're all chilling out, like messing about, having fun, playing tag, as you said. And then, unfortunately, because they've let their guard down, I guess kids being just having fun, she gets a net thrown around her by a character wearing a gas mask, and it looks like a tribute to Raiden because he has the straw Raiden hat. They're like samurai hats. She gets taken away, and Turbo Kid's idyllic existence that he had, like just going around having fun with someone he probably wanted to be his girlfriend, he's thinking in his head, is shattered.
Yeah, so she gets captured, he runs away. To be fair, she told him to, but he's not the hero just yet. He's still just the kid. But that won't last for long because he falls through the ground into what is revealed to be the Turbo Rider's spaceship, jet, car. I'm not really sure because it's like obviously buried underground. So now we know that the Turbo Rider isn't just a comic book. He was a real life figure, and he finds his corpse still in his turbo suit. This is the sword in the stone moment. Puts on the Nintendo wrist game pack inspired glove blaster. So he's got the full turbo suit, but he still has his BMX helmet on. So the Turbo Kid is born, and he sets out and quickly finds the Raiden-esque bandit who has kidnapped Apple. We get to see him use his turbo blaster for the first time.
Yeah, and I really like the effects when he uses the turbo blaster. It's very He-Man-esque, you know, like that noise. I'm not going to do the noise, but you know it, ching, like, and then it's like very good practical He-Man-esque effects where it's like a clearly like a CGI ball. But what's great about it is like so cartoonish, the actual shot, but then when it hits him, this is why I love this film. Like, it's so cartoonish in a sense, but then it's mixed in with like unbelievable violence and gore. So when the turbo glove wrist blaster hits him, he just explodes in like a shower of guts, and you're thinking like, I don't know what I was expecting out of it, but I don't know how I was expecting that. Like,
because there hasn't been uber violence yet. Like, it has not been a whole lot of action just yet, and this is pretty much the first major violent scene we get, and it is fucking gory as shit. You know, that is the first of many full body explosions in this film. But I was almost certain that the body explosion was also CGI, and that's fine, you know, it's that's a hard thing to do, but it wasn't. It was practical effects as well. It's such a well done effect. Transition is just perfect. And again, like, you know, the directors love practical effects. They wanted everything possible to be practical. And throughout the film, as we get more battle scenes and fight scenes and exploding bodies and heads getting impaled and cut off, you know, it just gets better and better. The gore is just wonderful.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like we've said many times, practical effects. So he's exploded Raiden. So Turbo Kid's mission now is coming of age. He's donned the Turbo Rider's costume. His mission now goes from just scraping a life, being his little man cave bubble, to having a mission in life to rescue Apple from these horrible bandits. So he jumps on his BMX and he rides all the way to Zeus's evil lair, which is looks like it's in a disused warehouse.
Pretty much, yeah.
Classic evil villain's lair. Zeus is in there as the overlord. You know, he's loving life. He's got his contraptions. He's got his team. If I didn't love this film already, and when I saw it was him, Rico, you know what to do, Starship Troopers. I'm so glad I didn't like research anything of this film before I like watched it, because even if I saw a poster and I saw it was on it, I was fanboying. I was like, oh my god, it's Michael Ironside.
You know, there's certain actors who are the sign of a good film because they just have the anti-John Travolta superpower, where John Travolta can never pick a good project despite being such a star. And say someone like Kurt Russell, we always say, is almost never in a bad film. Even when it's a film you might not be that into, like that Santa Claus movie, it's a good Santa Claus movie. And Michael Ironside is the sign of a probably going to be a really good bad film. Like I say that with affection and love. He's just fucking fantastic, man. Like he's just so great. And he's classic Michael Ironside, chewing up the scenery, over the top delivery of every line of dialogue, but with the occasional wink and a nod to the camera. He is your typical villain in these sort of films. You know, he doesn't just exploit the populace to be the king of the land. He also is a bit of a sadist, and he loves to have people fight in his empty swimming pool battle arena, where he makes people fight to the death for his amusement, including Frederick's brother, who we see die early on in the film at the hands of Skeletron. But Frederick's been captured, so once Turbo Kid shows up, he sees that Apple, another random NPC, and Frederick are in the arena. So he's about to use his blaster, but it's run out of juice. It needs to recharge, which is anytime we basically want to have an actual prolonged battle, the blaster needs to recharge. Anytime Turbo Kid and his friends need a bit of plot armor, the blaster is charged up, ready to go, and ready to blow up everyone in sight. But like I said, it's not working, so he gets thrown into the arena as well.
It's embarrassing for him, because it's like I compare it to having erectile dysfunction. Like when it's showtime, it never turns up.
And he says a big line before he tries to use it as well. He's like, "This is my power," and then everyone starts cracking up when it doesn't work.
And then they're all like, Zeus and all his cronies are like sniggering and laughing.
And you get a great little moment where Frederick is basically given the pre-game tactics talk. I'll take the slow guy, you take the big guy, you take that small guy over there. He's obviously not taking Apple too seriously at the minute, but she's armed with her gnome stick, and before he can even say go, she's already run off and is taking on the biggest guy with an axe, knocks him down, and she's kind of just like kicking the fuck out of him, whacking him with her gnome. And we get into the battle, which is just incredible. We said cartoonish violence, and this is probably the best fight scene in terms of that in the whole film.
Turbo Kid has resorted to melee weapons, essentially. So he's got a little sword. He cuts into his head, and his skull just... I don't even... Like, you'd have to watch a film to explain it. Like, spins around, like, and then he drops to the floor.
You're getting body parts cut off and thrown in to become a weapon in someone else's fight as they're taking on all the people individually.
There's always like one Goliath henchman that he's fighting that has a sack with just an eye poking out of it. He's fighting him, and you're like thinking, how can Frederick beat him? Frederick's on the floor. His hand's already chopped off, so he's using his stump as like a shield. Luckily, when Turbo Kid is chopped off, not chopped off, the other guy's spinning head is knocked off his hat with spikes coming out of it. This sort of trope always happens in films where our heroes almost losing the battle, about to get killed, and then suddenly, by divine intervention, something to help them comes into their path. He grabs it just in time, puts it into his adversary's head, whose eye like explodes out of him, and it's gore fest, but brilliant gore. And just overall, the fight was just a gory heaven.
Oh, it was brilliant.
I would describe it.
It was so good. It was so good. And funniest of all, I love the little NPC guy who, at the start of the fight, he runs with his knife towards the biggest guy, and then he trips over and just plunges the knife right into his own eye, and then gets his head absolutely decimated with a mallet. And so they beat the fuck out of all these guys, kill them all. Everyone's like clapping and like, whoa. But Zeus doesn't play by the rules. Even though they won, he pulls out his gun and shoots Apple in the chest. Turbo Kid is obviously freaking out and upset. But this is where we discover that she is in fact a robot. And he's like almost feeling like disillusioned and like, you didn't tell me. And she's just like, oh, of course I'm a robot. Like, what's the problem? Like, you didn't know? And you realize her whole vibe and demeanor suddenly makes sense because she is a robot. She doesn't need to eat, doesn't need to drink, doesn't need to sleep, and can survive in the wasteland whilst keeping her programmed, ultra positive, ultra sweet, ultra friendly personality. Zeus is about to kill the rest of them, but Turbo Kid's glove blaster has recharged and it's ready to go. So he goes to shoot and completely misses or slips, but luckily ends up blowing up a gas canister, which was conveniently placed. Everyone's scattered, there's smoke, dust, no one can see, and Frederick says like, all right, this is our time to get out. They get far enough away and Frederick parts ways with them, but now, he gives them the respect. It's a very different meeting to the first time the kid bumped into him. Now he's Turbo Kid. So they've escaped, but we see that after being shot by Zeus, Apple is starting to have her power drained. And I love the fact that it's done with power display with the heart symbol slowly going down, just like from the old Zelda games. Fucking great little touch.
Love that.
So now we have a new mission for Turbo Kid. He's got to go to a robot graveyard to try and find a replacement body.
Yeah, they set off, but we have double jeopardy now because Apple's heart's run out and she shuts down. She doesn't seem to be bothered about shutting down.
Never bothered about anything.
Yeah, Turbo Kid's like, wait, so when the hearts get down to 0, you'll die? And she's like, yeah, I'll die. She doesn't care. But on the other side of double jeopardy, Zeus is fuming because they've got away, and he sent out his muscle, his bodyguard, his right-hand man, Scalatron. So they're racing against time to save Apple, but they're also now being hunted by Scalatron.
And we've also discovered that in classic movie villain trope where Zeus, when they were fighting in the arena, he tells them his whole evil plan. Where he's getting all the water from is people. We see that nod to Soylent Green earlier now making sense, because when he kills people or people die in his arena, they blend them up and extract all the water out of their body. So I love these couple of sequences now where it delves more into the love story. It's less action orientated and we just have the mini road trip movie within the movie as Turbo Kid and Apple's riding along his BMX during the day, and at night they're camping and talking long into the night, and we're getting these romantic moments where will they kiss, they don't, you're not really sure. Apple discovers that he's been drawing pictures of her and she's like enamored, and he's a bit shy about it, but we see that he's obviously becoming more and more enamored by her. And we get more insights into the kid's childhood and life. He starts talking about his mother and his father. And, my mum used to say that every time someone dies, they become a star in the night. And that's why there's so many stars in the sky at night. And he thinks his mother's probably up there watching over him right now. And we also get flashbacks throughout the film, which aren't showcased the best as flashbacks. Usually if it was an 80s movie, often you'd have it fade in and then fade out into the flashback, or have some sort of visual cue where you know it. But I didn't realize a lot of these flashbacks were flashbacks until Michael Ironside shows up without his eye patch. And we actually discover that when he was a little boy, the kid witnessed murder of his parents at the hands of Zeus. And his mother, using her little, was it a crossbow or a bow and arrow? Yeah, using a crossbow, was the one that took out Zeus's eye, which he fucking doesn't even react to. He just like takes it in the eye and then breaks it off and is like, whatever. So now we know that the kid's always had a motivation to take on Zeus. He hates Zeus. Zeus is literally the guy that murdered his parents. We get to the robot graveyard and he's looking around for a body, but they're interrupted by Skeletron, who shows up and starts fighting them. All is lost. This is our moment in the story where Turbo Kid is at his lowest. Apple is seemingly dead and never going to come back. But this is when Frederick comes back and he ends up rescuing him, and he has his moment of like, what are you going to do, kid? He's like, I'm going to fucking go save the day. So we get to the final big fight scene, which I got to be honest, isn't as good as the arena fight scene, but it's still fucking fantastic because it is just a gore fest yet again. Some of the shit that happens is just so ridiculous. You have people being cut in half and their torso and legs ending up landing on the heads of other henchmen who are then just spending the rest of the fight doing the Velma's lost her glasses from Scooby-Doo, like sort of like patting around in the air. It never seems to occur to them just to lift it off their head. You have people getting exploded, people's heads getting cut off, and it is just fucking glorious.
Yeah, it's very Black Knight from Monty Python and the Holy
Yes.
Grail. Like, I've still got legs, I can beat you. And he's like,
bite your bloody arms off.
yeah. And to add into it, the classic final fight, you have to have a giant bomb that's on a timer.
Of course.
You know, Frederick's brought that along to explode everyone, which is on a 2-minute timer. So that gets down to 0 while they're scrabbling around and fighting. And you think, oh shit, it's game over for all of them. But then you have the other classic film trope, error. So you're like, oh shit, the bomb hasn't gone off.
So they're cutting through the henchmen, but they're starting to lose the fight. But just in time, Turbo Kid's glove blaster is working again. So he starts just blowing the shit out of guys. And you see the first couple of blow up, and then the henchmen behind are like, oh, fuck this. They're like, I don't want to get blown up. And he's taking them all out, and then he gets to Zeus, and he blasts him right in the chest. And straight away you're like, okay, so Zeus didn't blow up. He just takes the shot and flies backwards. What's all that about? And it's revealed that he is also a robot, because he's got the classic first Terminator film where he's got half his face blown off. So you just see like a prosthetic metal and a big red eye where his face used to be. Zeus starts doing some kind of weird power-up thing. It's kind of like the spirit bomb from Dragon Ball Z, where he's like building up this energy and he's going to start shooting, but the bomb seems to start working again. So they kick it under him just in time, but it's potentially going to kill Turbo Kid. And just as it's exploding, Apple jumps in the way of him, does the classic self-sacrifice, and she dies. The dust is starting to settle, and I was sure, because of the kind of film it is, where it's brutal, but it's also trying to tick every box and make you happy, just leave you with a smile on your face, I was sure she was going to live. You know, in that moment where Turbo Kid managed to kill Skeletron by a paracel, where he spikes it into him and then opens up the paracel so the umbrella's shielding them from the splattering showers of blood, and they have that moment underneath it where he and Apple kisses, and you're like, fuck yeah. You know, we've had that moment. They finally kiss, so surely she's not going to die. But she does. And I was just like, I'm still pissed that Apple dies in this film. I was devastated.
Yeah, there's so many moments of when you think she was dead. Like, she's been shot loads of times. Even when she comes back, you see Skeletron advance into her and you're thinking, Skeletron's going to finish her off. As you said, Turbo Kid saves them, they kiss. I was shocked as well. And if I think about it, I think she's probably my favourite character. I just loved her positive enthusiasm.
Especially because she then dies. You know, it's giving you everything you want, and then it takes it away from you at the last second.
I just want to touch on one moment of this fight that was most memorable to me. I did like the stacking of the body, the Velma guy. There was one moment where all the technology's broken, and it's Turbo Kid versus one of Zeus's NPC henchmen, and the NPC henchman brings out a hammer. So Turbo Kid brings out his little hammer, and I love this scene because Zeus's henchman then splits the hammer, and it's like a nunchuck. And I was like, do you know what? That's fucking cool as hell. Like, it's very much like the Indiana Jones scene where he's like swishing around the sword and he just gets the gun. And they only done that because they had all had the shits on set. So fantastic scene. And when the nuke blows and wipes out Zeus, the final, one of the great bits of when you think everything's done in the fight, that the heroes won the day, the bomb exploding then sets off the underground water source, and all the clear water start pouring out, and a geyser like above their heads, and you're like, fucking hell, by luck, after that big scrap and the bomb going off, they fucking finally found the water source, and you're like, this film just keeps going and going, doesn't it?
Yeah, so Turbo Kid has saved the wasteland, or this little corner of the wasteland anyway. You know, he's beaten Zeus, the evil bad guy. He had his love story, even though it's cut short sadly at the end as Apple dies saving him, and he's found the water source. So there's going to be abundant water for all of the wasteland. But as he buries Apple and Frederick shows up and they have their little hero-to-hero final conversation, what are you going to do, kid? And he's like, I want to see the rest of the wasteland. And he sets off by himself into the wasteland. And you just know, even though there is a planned sequel, but we haven't got it yet. It's still in development, but in that stage of development where like I think they're still just talking to the actors and stuff and drum up some interest. I don't think it's in the works just yet. I really hope it ends up getting made. As he walks off into the desert at the end, I got to see more Turbo Kid adventures. I need to see him in new lands, new villains that are oppressing, new groups of survivors that he has to go in and save, other fights he's going to have with bizarre, weird characters and ridiculous, over-the-top practical effects and gore and squibs and blood explosions. You got to see more of this film in this world following Turbo Kid.
Yeah, and then a really nice ending to where the post credits play. Reminds me of that. I love that Simpsons episode where he's looking into the sky at the stars, and then the credits roll. It like zooms up into space, and it's like a bright star, I guess, reflecting Apple looking down at him. And it's just a great ending to a great film. Like, to sum it up, and I won't need long on this. When I first saw the title was Turbo Kid, I realized it was post-apocalyptic. I was thinking, oh, Turbo Kid in a post-apocalyptic is going to be nicey nice. It shouldn't be like that. Then I saw it had a mature 18 rating, and I was thinking, what the fuck? Like, the way it transpired, like the tributes to the 80s, the tributes to He-Man, the special effects, Michael Ironside. I don't know how many times I can repeat that. The gore. It was just like, it's just an indie gem, and like, I could probably have this conversation with you in 5 years. I can see it being on a trajectory where it becomes like a cult classic like Galaxy Quest or something like that. It is this type of film and it is that good. Fucking fantastic. Go and watch it.
Yeah, without a doubt, this film is brilliant. It is just so easy to enjoy and engage with. The writers and directors said they wanted it to feel like an 80s film that was lost and just resurfaced in 2015. And they did such a good job of that. Like, the tone throughout is always on point. It's always exactly where it should be. And it delves into comedy, delves into gore. It's incredibly difficult to keep that tone on point throughout the film, and they do such a good job of it, from the world building to the characters to all the 80s references, which are abundant, but it never makes it feel like a parody or a piece of fan fiction, or it's never too much. They're just littered throughout in ways where if you know those films, you'll identify it, but if you don't, it's not confusing to an uninitiated viewer. You can still just enjoy it. The amount of time it's spent focusing on the love story, arguably you could say it could easily be too much, considering what you're really coming here for is the gore and the action and the world building. But I loved every part of it. I wanted to see more of it. As much as I loved the crazy fight scenes, I loved just seeing him and Apple hanging out, by the campfire, talking about the stars. Those moments are fantastic. And the visuals of the film are just incredible. It becomes so cartoonish at points where it's just ridiculous, but it's not ridiculous. It's fantastic. It's exactly what you want. And I want more Turbo Kid. I don't care if it says a comic book, it says a film, it's a TV series, however they managed to do it, just give me more Turbo Kid, because this was fucking brilliant. So that's an easy recommendation for Turbo Kid.